All right, what's going on, everybody? It's your boy Crypto Wolf, and I'm gonna do something a little bit interesting today. You may or may not learn something, but it's an interesting topic that I just wanted to kind of run past you, see what you think, get your opinion on it as well. I find it fascinating, but going to be talking about fractal patterns. If you don't know what a fractal pattern is, you can see in the little green and purple design they got going on there. Basically, it's when you see patterns at various scales, but like you might see the same pattern on this gigantic scale and you see it on a little bit smaller scale, see it on a microscopic scale. And things tend to repeat in nature like that, and it also applies to the charts as well. And so, real quick quote of the day: the universe is fractal. Whatever energy signature we carry will be repeated infinitely, again and again, until we change that vibration. So that's also got a little extra in there on top of the fractal thing. It's basically, if you don't do anything different, nothing's ever going to change. So if you are trying to make that life-changing money or improve yourself or whatever it might be, you're gonna have to do something. You're gonna have to change that frequency a little bit. Gonna have to add a little something, maybe take something away. But it's not just gonna happen on its own. And let's get into it. So looking over here at the chart, you can see just a real quick first breakdown of how this applies to, what we generally do on this channel, which is trading. You can see we're over here around the monthly chart. We have this big yellow flag pattern right there. Bullish flag came in the bottom, left out the top. And if you were to zoom down here to the daily, let's resume in a little bit. Let's see if we can find our spot again. You can see there's our big yellow pattern, and within that pattern we have another pattern. Now this one happens to be a bear flag because we came in the top, left out the bottom, but you can see we got patterns on patterns on patterns within patterns. Come down to the 4 hour, zoom in even further, and you can see within that pattern we have an even smaller pattern. We've got a little, this one's a little bit funky, but basically, came in the top and left back out the top in this case. But if you keep zooming in, if you were to go down to the 10-minute, you could come in here and it's a poor example of one, but you could start coming in, drawing, some patterns like this, whatever it might be. Again, like I said, not a very good one, but it's what's in front of me right now. So you kind of get the picture. So if you start to learn trading patterns, it can work whether you are scalping on a lower time frame or if you're trying to judge the overall market direction on a macro time frame. And just to dig into this a little bit and keep it interesting, I have a little slideshow for you. So this right here is a great example of a fractal pattern. You can see like the real big blue spots where it's nice and big, and as it shrinks down smaller, these little waves get smaller. But then you look around the edges, and each one of these little branches is essentially, like another big vein with smaller branches going off of it, getting infinitely smaller, but always having that same shape, that same pattern. Another example here, nice and pretty to look at as well. But if you were to like zoom in real far, how we have this big swirl over here on the left, you zoom in real far just on the edges and you keep getting smaller and smaller and smaller, but again, same pattern. Nice little nifty colors there. But we also see this happen in nature. It kind of like I said right off the bat, we kind of live in a fractal universe where we see patterns everywhere from real big, and I'll get into showing those in a minute here, but they show up in nature quite often. Like here we have a leaf, you take the main veins and then you go down to the little sub branches and then branches off of that, and it keeps getting smaller, but generally the same thing going on. you know, even down to snowflakes. If you've ever, you know, looked really closely, you know, you might have a big flake, you zoom in, you see something like this, and you have all these, I don't even know what to call them, crystalline structures. And even over here with those, yeah, man, I don't even know what those things are called. When you see them on the ground and you pick them up and you could blow the little seeds off of it. You know, similar situation going on right there. Even all the way up to looking at a map and you see like a river and tributary system. Again, same thing going. You got the main river with some streams coming off of it with some creeks feeding into that. And if you're a hiker, that right there is a beautiful map, I will say so myself. So you always got to stay around some, you know, some water features. And even over here to lightning, same exact thing. So you're starting to get the picture a little bit. You know, we see the same patterns, you know, repeating at scale almost no matter where you look. And I'll get to the next part here in a second, but this one I just thought was kind of cool looking. I guess technically it would be a fractal, even though it's just like little water droplets. But that can even go all the way up to the scale of, you know, off into outer space. And I'll show some specific details of that in a minute. You know, because the galaxy in and of itself is just a larger fractal of, you know, like a solar system down to an individual planet, down to life on that planet, down to a molecule, down to an atom. And I guess an interesting question would be, you know, is the universe itself, that our galaxy is just one of many, 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 many in, could it be that the universe is fractal as well? Do we have tons of universes? I doubt they're going to be technicolor like this guy right here, but it's an interesting thought, enough to make a head start exploding. But then one of the biggest things that you see in nature that is very fractal, that shows up everywhere, particularly when I'm talking about like energy, is this toroidal field, this torus shape. And right here you can see like the magnetic field with the positive and negative right there. And you can see it a little bit more in 3D here, like on the left, how you have that torus, that donut shape. And it is absolutely how electromagnetic fields are shaped. But then again here, you know, on a larger scale, we have a galaxy here. And if you were to picture the electromagnetic fields around a great big galaxy, looks like this one might have like a little pulsar in the middle or something, but at least a giant black hole, it tends to go in the shape, in the motion of a torus. Over here, all the way down to just our individual sun, has this same exact toroidal fields going around it. This one just happens to show how it changed over years when you actually get that polar flip, when the North and the South Pole flip. Won't dig too deep into that. And then come to our own planet, our home here on the Earth, also has this toroidal shaped electromagnetic fields, and it has multiple layers, if you will, almost like an onion as it goes out. And these, you know, little loops that are closer to the surface. The reason it's kind of oblong shaped is because the sun's energy pushes against it, so it blows it to one side. But those the smaller little rings, the smaller toruses there, can actually condense enough to like snap down on the planet and create like a giant electrical scar. It's pretty crazy. It's called the L-shell collapse, but I digress. You know, over here, again, you have like a pulsar where it's shooting out the top and the bottom across the axis. But again, you have that toroidal shape of the magnetic field. And it makes you wonder, okay, so it goes all the way from the galaxy to the solar system to the planet itself to the other planets in the system. It makes you wonder, like, is the universe fractal as well? Or, you know, maybe each one of these little black dots and these spiral arms, maybe each one of those is a universe? Who the hell knows? Because it's going to be so gigantic, I doubt we will ever find out. But again, you know, it comes down to the person themselves. You know, people talk about like the chakras and energy centers and all that stuff. And I'm not really too deep into the new age thing, but we do absolutely have our own electromagnetic fields. And just as a side note right here, you can see this chick right there. If you were to look a little bit closer, you might notice that the the posterior, the apple bottom, happens to be in a very similar shape as well. But, you know, even looking at trees here, you can see, and the point in the middle of where, you know, it kind of curves in toward each other, and that, I don't know, column or shaft in the middle is actually called the 0 point. That's kind of where the name 0 point energy comes from. Have fun with that rabbit hole. But you can see the energy, you know, both goes out the top and the bottom, and you can see on the tree there where you get all the branches and the leaves up top, get all the roots on the bottom. Tends to be symmetrical, even down to apples, oranges, peaches, nuts, all kind of stuff has that energy flow in the same, or at least similar shape, all the way potentially down to an atom itself, where I'm not 100% on this one. I've heard it postulated that the fields around individual atoms themselves are toroidal shaped. And even these little guys, which I'm not going to get too deep into, but there's plenty of interesting ones out there, and they are all, maybe not all, but most of them are based on toroidal shapes. But another interesting tidbit, you know, it doesn't even have to be like a concrete object. It can be, and I get magnetic fields don't seem all that concrete, but they do exist. But it could be a system or even something abstract. In this case, we have a hurricane. And sure enough, it does generally have that shape, that energy flow geometry of a torus as well. So it's interesting how all these patterns just show up all throughout nature. But again, like I said, it doesn't have to be something concrete. It can be, you know, we see patterns in data as well. And talking about trading, you know, market data is very much, you know, the result of, you know, human behavior. And we absolutely see patterns in the chart. Doesn't matter what chart it is, whether it's, you know, Bitcoin, Ethereum, the S&P 500, gold, silver, ETFs, or, you know, your allowance when you were a little kid. If you were to put it on chart, I guarantee you there's a pattern to it. And then, again, we see patterns in that. And then this one actually is not like an investing, trading pattern chart. This is actually from scientific data charts. You know, just like the charts that we look at, they are also looking at patterns, whether it be, you know, downtrends, uptrends, shifts in cycle. You know, cycles is a big one, particularly when you get into like this, which is, you know, solar data. If you were looking at this and you were thinking, all right, maybe we were looking at an altcoin chart right here, you know, what would you be thinking? You'd say, okay, well, we got some cycles, but we got some diminishing returns on these cycles. You know, the high over here on cycle 23 is definitely more than cycle 24, which, by the way, this is a little bit old chart. We're actually off the chart at the moment, but we're actually coming back up because we're into cycle 25 now. We're kind of like the equivalent of where 2011 is on this chart. We're at about that level right now. It's definitely been picking up, but you know, you got reversals, you got uptrends, you got smaller little trends within trends. You get the picture. And even over here, this guy is, I forgot, I know it's solar data, but you can also find divergences the same way we look for divergences in the charts and in Market Cipher and everything. You can also see divergences in other data and other systems if you are measuring or charting them as well. And just like in the regular, you know, the crypto charts, that can be a sign of something about to change, or like how we look for reversals. And so it is kind of interesting. You can see the little oscillator down here on the bottom where it's, you know, started taking a dip before the big red candles came in. And I have no idea what this chart is for right here, but again, it is showing divergences in scientific data. But that can also be shown in society itself, particularly if you looked at things like population growth or GDP or, you know, productivity, a friggin' freedom index, whatever it might be. You know, you look at a chart like this, and the first thing that jumps out at me is I see a bear flag. You know, we've got like a big triangle shape over here on the left, and we broke out to the bottom and just continued to plummet. Now, granted, this is projected off into the future, but yeah, that there's Australia's population growth rate, clearly in a bear market. And then over here, you know, we have the population of wolves compared to mooses. Is that what you say? Mooses? Moose? And, you know, looking at this, you can kind of see some similarities over here where you're putting in higher highs, but then all of a sudden you have a dump. And after you have a dump, you see the moose population coming up. And as the moose population dumps, the wolves start coming up. And you see some correlation there as well. And, you know, what does this have to do with trading? Well, maybe there is a similar relationship between, you know, the S&P 500 and Bitcoin, or maybe gold and Bitcoin, things like that. And is this going to be like super helpful to anything you're doing at the moment? Not necessarily. This is more or less just an interesting thought experiment video where we're just pointing out some things about the way the universe and the world and life works. So it's just for enjoyment. Don't take it too seriously. And over here, you know, Singapore population growth rate. It looks very much like an ICO, does it not? An initial coin offering. If anything, it's almost like this first section's almost a reverse, you know. Came out the gate right there, just absolutely crashed and dumped. Did a super pump, crashed right back, and then it finally found like a fair value price. Which, anybody from Singapore, I'm not saying that your country's a pump and dump. Don't take it like that. Over here, you know, energy consumption in the United States. You know, looking over at this chart, if I were to erase all the letters and the dates off the bottom of this thing, you might think we were looking at Bitcoin cycles. You know, even just right here, the petroleum one at the very top looks very similar to, you know, the latest Bitcoin cycle. Let me bring it up over here on the chart. You know, you can see right there. Where it's kind of interesting to see the similarities between the current bull cycle and that petroleum line right there on the chart. Kind of sad that they let nuclear plateau like that. I mean, coal going down is probably a good thing. Natural gas going up, maybe. Kind of have to for the moment. Renewables still not even holding a candle to anything else. And they want to shut this other stuff off before you actually get renewables up to a sustainable level. That's when you know they don't care about, you know, making sure people have energy, even though they act like that's what it is. Over here, you know, getting into some of the more bearish charts that you might be looking at and seeing patterns in. Fertility rate over the long term, looking over here. You know, that's a big one in the world right now, and multiple factors that I'm not going to get into, but yeah, that one is potentially going to be causing some issues. And the whole topic of population and population growth around the world is an interesting one. But, you know, this one, I have no idea why they decided to split the US into black and white. It's kind of stupid. But, you know, even looking in here, I could see some, you know, little patterns, some little reversals where you start putting in like a higher low over here, and then it makes that reversal, start putting in a lower high over there. But that is what I had for the little slideshow. So just coming back over to the chart, just to kind of recap a little bit. You know, keep in mind, and I will do another video that is specifically about, you know, patterns in regards to trading and ones to look for. I've brought it up once in the past and showed a little graphic, but I will do a video specifically on that for those who want to maybe get into pattern trading. And that's absolutely where I started out, like before Market Cipher and anything like that. Not before it existed, but before I could afford it, you know, started out pattern trading, and it worked reasonably well, particularly on the, you know, the higher time frames and stuff. But, you know, seeing a, a bull flag up here, or, maybe like a upward channel. And just knowing how those patterns typically behave can give you a good edge into predicting where the market will go. And again, it's not always going to be 100% guaranteed that, every time you see this specific pattern, it's going to do exactly this or that. But, also seeing, and you will, when you start doing the pattern trading, you will see the patterns within patterns. You'll see that fractal nature of it. And not only will it help you get an idea about, the macro direction, but, once you're within this macro pattern, it gives you a good idea of what's going to be likely happening next. Like in this case where, we broke out the bottom, had a projected target. If you go from, high down to the bottom trend line, and they just, take it from up here, move it down here, gives you a projected level that, man, there's like a bump on my mouse pad, but gives you a guess at what level it might continue to go to. But you're not always going to have a pattern at a certain level to go off of. Like, you might have one down here. I'm just gonna do the drawing, but you might have this pattern that did break to the upside, but while you're in between here, there's really no pattern on this time frame. You're gonna have to have like maybe some little stuff in between. I'm just not necessarily saying that was the pattern, but yeah, then you get one up here, little reversal pattern going on there. Also keep in mind, if nothing else, you're at least generally getting some channels. It'll give you a place to put some support and resistance trend lines on there. But all right, I'm going to leave it at that. I'm not going to make this too long, and I am going to be doing another video here in a little bit, just talking about the general macro look at things, where the market's looking like it's heading, where we're at the moment, what Market Cipher has to say about it. Just throwing this out here on the 1 hour chart. Looks like we got a little bullish divergence. So we will see if the money flow will cooperate, because that's kind of the big issue at the moment. We were seeing some bullish divergence right here, but the money flow said, oh, hell no. I don't care, we're dumping. So we'll see what happens with that. Plus we have CME opening back up as well. So we'll see where they want to go. All right. Hope you enjoyed. I hope it was something interesting, some food for thought. I like to do a little different stuff, and I'm a nerd. I'm interested in all kind of different shit. So let me know what you thought. Let me know if you want some more just kind of random interesting things in life that maybe even have some correlation to trading as well. Appreciate you guys watching. Have a fantastic day, and happy Mother's Day to all the the mothers out there. I know most of the people watching this are guys, so remember to tell your mom, your wife, your girl, whoever, your dog, happy Mother's Day. Later.